Hey everyone, this is Brian from Motive Training, and today we're going to go over why it's important to have good hip flexion when you're deadlifting to get the most out of your hip extension. So what I'm going to have RJ do is go into a hip hinge or a Romanian deadlift without any weight. So he's just going to slowly transition his weight back into his hips, and we're going to just have him pause right there. So even though when we do this exercise, we tend to look at the glutes and hamstrings, what's happening on the back side of the hip, what's really pulling you into this position is the hip flexors, because what he's doing is flexing his hips. He's not actually extending them yet. The extension part comes when he stands upright, which I'll have him do next. That is where you're getting extension. So you're actually getting flexion, which is making the hip extensors lengthen under load, and then you're trying to have a stretch reflex come out of hip flexion and then get all that stuff on the backside to fire up on the way up. So realistically, it's not just pushing the hips back, it's how far can you pull yourself into flexion to be able to get the most out of extension. So if you want to test this out on your own, maybe you can see that hip flexion is actually a barrier for you, and we have other assessments that we do to detect this, but we can just do this standing up. I'm going to have RJ try to actually use his hip flexors to pull himself into as much hip extension as he can. When he does this, he's going to feel the backside of his hips light up a lot more because there's a lot more intent going on behind the exercise. So what he's going to do is imagine that he's trying to bring his knees toward his chest and his chest toward his knees. He's not folding in half. He's just trying to actually engage that front side tissue to pull himself deeper into extension, or flexion I should say. So we're going to have RJ slowly transition, but he's trying to pull himself down and pause. Now at this position, he should actually feel a much more loaded stretch on the backside because he engaged that front side tissue to really pull himself down into this flexed position. So can you feel more? Mm-hmm. Yep. And then from there, he will come out using his hip extensors to push forward. So in our industry, we tend to focus on just the hip hinge, just sitting back and then using those tissues to pull forward. But to get more out of this, you actually want to be able to pull yourself down using hip flexion. That will give you more bang for your buck as you go through your hip extension exercises. Don't just think about pushing the hips back. Think about how far can you pull yourself with your tissues into a flexed position to use hip extension to come out of it.